Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the Future Sox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me this evening is James Fox. How are you, James?
Hello, sir. I'm good. Thanks.
Wonderful. So, real exciting stuff happened this week, at least for us.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not for most other people, but for us, Bryan Ramos gets the call to the White Sox. Your reaction to that when you heard, I
Yeah.
texted you like almost immediately when he got pulled out of the game.
hmm
What were your thoughts?
Um. Well, initially, my first thought, I was like, I wonder if the White Sox are the third team in like this Padres trade. And then I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I think right away I went to like the necessity of it, where I think you right away were like, you went to the side of like, hey, Ramos isn't ready. This is weird, right? Which like I skipped right past. And I was like, okay, they clearly don't want to have Sosa back, or he's hurt in Charlotte because he hasn't played, right? For whatever
Yeah.
reason, Sosa was not an option for Mendick, and they literally don't have anybody else like without making another move. I know this like whole thing sounds stupid, and we've been talking about this all year, and people are like, who cares? It's a 40 man of a bad team, but like, like you add Remillard again, then you don't have the ability to send him back down because he could just like be a free. Like I just, I think they just looking at their few options, they're like, let's give Bryan Ramos a shot because they don't think it's gonna hurt him, So, and he gets the big league meal and the service time and whatnot. So, it's a cool story. Good for him. I don't know if he's ready. We'll see, right? I mean, you would like to think that he needed some Charlotte time, but stranger things have happened where you get an extended run and find a way to stay somehow.
Yeah, the major question being that with the way that he started off this season was kind of my thought as to, he has heated up as of recent, but it's still the slow start starting off this year. I the ideal way to do things is to make somebody have to earn their spot, but if you've got injuries and you don't have somebody else that you would rather put in that position, I guess it just makes sense.
For sure. And I had some questions on Twitter about like why not Coulson Montgomery instead of him. And, I was like, well, Ramos is on the 40 man. And then somebody kind of asked me a question. And I don't mean to like be critical of anyone here. And like I might come off pompous, but like there's like a lot of people that don't understand the 40 man thing and like how like Rule 5 ties in and whatnot. Like, and it's not like a criticism of anybody, but I guess it's just I think the league is tough to follow like without knowing at least like some of that, that the guy has to be on the 40 to play on the team, blah blah blah. But I mean, essentially, like they signed Ramos in 2018, so since he signed like as an amateur, like a high school age type guy, he's got, he's 5 years in the system for Rule 5 eligibility. So that's 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. So December of 22, Bryan Ramos was added to the 40 man. And Bryan Ramos was not ready then, obviously. He was an A ball. But, in order to protect him from other teams, like picking him up, like they had to add him. So he's just kind of been sitting on the 40 man. So, in reference to Coulson Montgomery, who was drafted in 2021, that time does not come up until December of 25. So, and he'll be in the big leagues by then. So it doesn't really matter, but that's just for anybody that wasn't sure, that's why guys like Bryan Ramos are on the 40 man roster. Jose Rodriguez had the same thing, and the White Sox deemed him expendable, obviously, which we've talked about. But I mean, there's a reason why some of these super young guys are like on the 40, like long before is like ideal.
Yeah, I obviously the Coulson Montgomery thing. He hit another, hit his fifth home run today, which is nice to see, and he did have two walks. So the plate approach is starting to show up, but he's not there yet. And I mean, to be fair, Ramos, I don't think was technically ready to be there yet either. But with what they had available otherwise, this is the best option, and with where he is on the in his years of eligibility, it just makes sense to bite the bullet and bring him up, I guess, at least in their eyes.
Right. And do you think they do the double promotion thing? Like if this doesn't work out, do they option him to Charlotte? So then it's ultimately like some big league experience with the big league life, whatever, but like you're not coming back to Birmingham, you're going to Triple. And then, you're basically on call at that point. Like,
Well, I mean, that's what they did with Popeye last year. Is they brought him up,
yeah,
and then just dumped him in Charlotte afterwards, and he got some AAA at bats and whatever. And yeah, so I just out of curiosity, I looked to see how Popeye was doing. He's not doing so hot for the Reading Phillies
in Double-A, yeah.
Yeah, he's not doing so hot. I don't really know what his deal is, but he's
Yeah.
always a slow starter anyway. So,
Mhm.
Other things that are on their way is the ACL is starting up this week, and I know that you've got a preview that you're writing or have already written.
Yeah, it's ready. It should be published Monday morning. So,
so do you want to go through? You start with the starting pitching about who's going to be in the ACL, who, basically a who's who of who's going to be in the ACL.
Yeah. So, the team is a little bit more interesting, I would say. Like we kind of talked a little bit about this, like a little more interesting than like past years, where there's basically no prospects in Arizona because the really tough thing about it is, like the guys that are in Arizona are the previous year's international signings usually, or like high school players, right? So, like theoretically, like if you have super college heavy drafts and your international classes are like guys like Oscar Colas who are like already stateside, like in Double-A, like your rookie ball teams aren't going to be very good. Like, so it's just kind of, just like the way the way that it's been there. So, but this time, Grant Taylor, last year's second round pick, obviously, he's getting some rave reviews in Arizona. James Fegan, who's also, recently announced that he's contributing over at Baseball America, which is great for Sox fans. Scouting director, player development, whatever you want to call it, Paul Yanish, basically told him that Grant Taylor's sitting 97 to 100. And, we've seen some video of Grant Taylor. I think Grant Taylor is probably a little bit too good for that level. I don't know how long he'll be there, but it seems like he is like definitely starting there for sure. Along with him, some other draft picks from last year, Christian Opper, fifth round lefty, 19-year-old, pretty high upside guy. So he pitched 7 innings in the ACL last year already. And then the other guy from that draft class, I think that people would know, Matthias Lacombe. He's, the French-born kid from the JUCO. He wants to be the first French major leaguer. And then Maximo Martinez was the other part of the Aldrin Bautista trade. So he's got a big-time power fastball, but he has yet to pitch outside of the complex, essentially. So, we'll see if he can make it there, And then other than that, Luis Reyes last year was one of their big money kids, $700K out of the Dominican, one of the better Dominican starters. He had a really, really rough start, but then kind of turned it on at the end. We'll see how that goes. So, and then I don't know for sure, but on the roster, it lists some rehabbing, Norge Vera rehabbing. We'll see, right? Sean Burke is supposedly there. Tristan Stivers is there. Is it Stivers? Say it right.
Stivers.
Somebody's going to get mad at me. Stivers, yeah. So there's him, and then there's just a whole bunch of guys. Like the White Sox signed
Shane Drowan.
Shane Drowan's there. They signed former Orioles farmhand Cody Sedlock, who pitched at Illinois. He's 28, but he's listed on that roster. So we'll see. They kick off, if you're listening on the podcast, Monday tonight. So Monday night, I think 6 p.m. Arizona time. So is their first game.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's also a guy who pitched for the let's see, he pitched for Zachary Hammer. He's also another one of those rehabbing guys.
Yeah, he's there too. Yeah,
we got him from the Mets last year, I think. Mm-hmm. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Yeah. So, all right. Well, moving along to the position players then. obviously also some interesting names there. Better than we're used to with the it being mostly DSL guys and rehab guys. There's some actual prospects there this year.
Yeah, we got top 30 guys there. So here's the thing. Like I like made a comment to Ian before we started about how the team would be good. And then I immediately like went back on that. I don't know that the team will be good, but the team's definitely interesting, right? Like it could go one of two ways. Like we've talked about the standout DSL kid that I fall in love with that then has the 500 OPS for 2 straight years in Arizona to never be heard from again. So look, it's like always possible. Scouts seem to really like Javier Mogollon. Like they think that he's going to hit. We'll see. Like that'll be cool. The others in his same international class, Abraham Nunez Jr., plays some center field. There's 2 catchers, Angelo Hernandez and Steven Flores, both interesting. D'Angelo Tejada, I'm kind of surprised they bumped him there. He's more of a defensive guy, but guys like that, they usually do 2 years in the DSL occasionally. So he's there. And then there's like repeat guys from previous international classes too, like Arnold Prado returns, Eric Hernandez, who was pretty highly regarded, who's just never hit.
The
He
next Juan
returns.
Soto.
Yeah, like he returns. Ryan Burrows is there. I'm not sure how long Burrows will be there, just because like I kind of assumed Burrows, the Panamanian from last year, top 30 guy, he like broke his hand in spring training. So
Yeah, that's why
I
there's no
assumed he
rehab designation. So
right.
I'm kind of confused by that.
Yeah, so I think he's just staying there. Like I assumed he would get a tune up and go to Canny. But maybe not. I mean, maybe he's just going to be there, which adds like another top 30 prospect. I didn't count him. I probably should have, but it's definitely more than normal. I think. Oh, I don't think I mentioned George Wolkow, but so George Wolkow too, like Nate, local guy, last year's 7th rounder. He's probably the biggest attraction. Um, but and I'm curious to see how much center field they have George playing. He's been playing some of it in Instructs, but I think the pitching and Mogollon really interesting, because if Mogollon does even what like a Jose Rodriguez or Bryan Ramos did in rookie ball, he's gonna come stateside probably pretty quickly, because with that profile, there's just no reason to have him beat up on terrible pitching in Arizona when you could try to find out if he's going to be a long-term contributor potentially.
You got anything on the coaching staff out there? I mean, I know Mike Gellinger's there. Other than that, I don't know any of these other guys.
Yeah, so they're like the coaches were repeats for the most part, but there is a new pitching coach, or let me see, Danny Gonzalez. He's a 2nd-year manager. Obviously, Gellinger, I think, lives in Arizona and has, there's been times where he's been on the big league staff. Like I remember Mike Gellinger working with Paul Konerko, like back in the day, like in the video room. Jacob Doris will serve as the pitching coach. I believe like he might have some Astros experience. Just from like I remember they brought in like a bunch of new people, and he was one of those people. Gerardo Olivares, I know nothing about, but he's obviously like under the new hitting coordinator. So, but yeah, Danny Gonzalez must be a guy that they kind of like. And then there's extra coaches, like Nassau Cabrera is the development coach. Jeremy Niebush was there last year as the athletic trainer, and then they also have a performance coach in Sierra Weathers. So, but I think that Nassau Cabrera is like a new position as the development coach. So
okay.
That's kind of interesting, but I mean, it's a massive roster. Like you'll have to read it. Like there's there's like a bunch of pitchers that I didn't even name because, they just have a million names there. A lot of times it's really tough to differentiate between starter and reliever, because it's like not that important. You just like get innings, right? So you may have 2 guys that profile as starters eventually pitch in the same game. Like a guy will go 3 and then another guy will go 3 or whatever, So I didn't even designate it. Like for people that are used to reading our previews, like for the DSL and ACL, I don't even do that. These guys are all the pitchers, because I never know how they're going to be used.
Yeah. Speaking of just getting work in, have you been paying attention to the Knights at all this past week?
Box
Because
scores. Yes.
yeah, okay, so you got Cannon and Nastrini in
Yes.
Charlotte,
Yes.
and so Nastrini's first time out,
Mm.
he did not have a great outing. Cannon did not have a great outing just the other day. Like I feel like they're just kind of going through the motions, just trying to get some work in,
Now that they're
which is
back down there, yeah, which is not
yeah,
great, obviously. And pitching in the international league's not easy, you know? So I kind of wonder like the plan for some of that, right? Like your veterans are now in the big leagues. So do some of these guys filter up to Charlotte like as Grant, like we were talking about Grant Taylor, right? Like Grant Taylor should be in Canny, but then that's going to move somebody to Winston and somebody to Birmingham. And, obviously, like, I think you have some guys in Birmingham that look more than ready for Charlotte, probably. Like I don't really necessarily want to like break up the Barons, but like Kai Bush and Drew Thorpe could be in Charlotte. I could argue the other guys too. Like I think leaving Eater and Iriarte is fine, but I mean, like even Mason Adams, like I think it just depends. Like how quickly do you want to see Mason Adams or guys like that, and how much does pitching in Charlotte matter, right? I think those are probably the questions that we don't have the answers to. Like if they're totally fine, like leaving that team together, and then you just like call the guy up from double, which they might be. I don't know. So that probably matters a little bit, but I do think there's multiple guys in Arizona that could pitch in Canny like at any time. So that's a full rotation of 6 dudes. So something's got to give at some point.
yeah, and you know the one person who was really not happy about Bryan Ramos getting called up was Elijah. Our very own Elijah Evans. He heard that we're in a text, me, James, and Evans, Elijah Evans, and I said Bryan Ramos got the call up, and he's like, "No, he was just starting to warm up." Well, sorry, Elijah.
Yeah.
He probably wanted to go to the White Sox more than staying in Birmingham.
Well, yeah, no, it's great for him, right? Like who big winners, him. Like you'd rather be in Chicago, like for like for sure, and you get. I mean, I think he's probably getting paid more anyway because he's on the 40 man, right? But there's probably an extra stipend in the big leagues, I would think, right? And you get the big league meal and
Yep. Yeah,
go
you
up
get the
there and
per
hang out
diem.
with the guys, right? So
Yeah, it's like a couple $100 per diem per day or whatever it is. So you
a
get an
lot
extra
of
$1,000
it's
a
a
week or whatever.
lot of Twinkies is what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was it that ate the Twinkies? Is that Moncada?
That was Moncada. Yeah. And
Yeah, well, he doesn't.
Luis Robert was Orange Fanta and Domino's.
Yeah. Do you remember? Like, oh God, there was something. Alexi Ramirez was like that too. I don't
Yeah.
know if
He ate badly.
it was
I
like
don't remember
it
what it
was like
was.
Krispy Kremes or something that he had for the first time, or like all sorts of weird like bananas and mayonnaise. Like there's just certain stuff that these guys just like didn't have the ability to eat, like when they
Yeah. I
came from
mean,
where they came from, where they did.
well,
Like
with Alexi, I mean, you saw it went straight to his hips,
yeah, yes, exactly. Well, I remember Luis Robert, like people following his Instagram pages. He's like pounding dominoes at like 11 o'clock at night in Birmingham, Alabama. Like
Mhm.
yeah, didn't really seem to matter, but
Still, all shredded, with
yeah,
a
yeah.
24 pack and a, 2%
I
body
mean,
fat did not matter.
if you'd never had pizza before, I bet Domino's is awesome.
I mean,
Like,
probably, So I wanted to bring this up here. So Blank Name says, I hate that they call Ramos up just when he was starting to hit there. Why promote the guy when he's just starting to feel good about himself? I'd say he probably feels better about himself now that he's on the White Sox.
yeah, probably. Was he? Did Blank Name? Did you miss the beginning of the show? I'm not calling you out. I'm just
Call him
asking
out.
because we like went over this. I could do it again if I need to, but
No, I mean, it's just,
yeah,
he'd rather be there.
I really think it is like it's more out of necessity than them like thinking Bryan Ramos is like ready or the answer at third. I mean, look, they'll sell it as like, look, if it works, trust me. Like they'll sell it as like, hey, we knew he was ready all along. Like, but I mean, this is basically like they need a guy because Mendick suddenly got hurt. Give this guy the chance. And do you know, like, is Sosa hurt in Charlotte?
I haven't seen
And he's
anything.
played for 2 straight days, right? But
Yeah. Yeah, he hasn't been in the lineup for the last couple of days. I don't know. I haven't heard anything, and I
yeah,
didn't see anything that I
Right. So,
remember. So
do you think they just like went to Pedro and they were like, Lenny Sosa or Bryan Ramos? And he was like, Ramos.
I mean, are they asking Pedro? If they're asking Pedro his thoughts on personnel moves, were already lost.
I
Doesn't
don't
matter.
know. So then maybe they do have a plan and they want to see. I mean, here's the thing: if Ramos doesn't heat it up, is it a different roster move? Like, if his last 7 days weren't that good, are they calling him up still? I would think no. I would
Well,
think
I mean,
then you find an expendable reliever and you do the Remillard thing we were talking about. So
yep. Yeah, I think that it likely is somebody else if he doesn't go on the recent 8 day hot streak where he's hitting 350 or whatever it was. I mean, granted, he doesn't look back, but he looks better, and the at bats have been better, and the at bats have been competitive. There's not like too many of those whoops swings or non-competitive at bats there. Like
right.
everything's looked pretty good, and it looks like it's transferred to Chicago as well because his at bats look pretty good today.
Well, he only played one game, but I mean, like he did stuff today that like Lenny and Sosa wasn't able to do in what 150 big league plate appearances. And look, I've been the Lenny and Sosa guy, but if he looks like a completely different guy. I mean, if 4A is a thing, I mean, he might be the epitome
He
of it,
might
right?
be, yeah.
So, and I always kind of wrestle with whether that's actually a thing or not. But I mean, look, man, like he he gets called up for a reason, and then he looks awful. I mean, it just is what it is, right? Like Ramos today got a sac fly, he singled, didn't look overmatched at all. So we'll see. Big leagues are tough, man. So they'll find a way to find his weaknesses here, and he'll have to. But I mean, that's the thing. I think you got to play him. I think he's got to play quite a bit, right? Like if they're, I don't know who they're facing in Tampa. If there's a super tough righty, maybe you sit him,
Eflin.
But yeah, I mean, like I think he's got to play.
Yeah, I don't. If you're gonna bring him up, in my opinion, you need to get him those at bats because you don't have somebody else that's pushing him out of the way. And to quote Ozzie Guillen, do you think he's going to be worse than that Shoemaker guy?
Yeah, right.
I don't. So you might as well get him in there and play him.
Hey, I think we might have been right on Braden Shoemaker.
Shocker.
Yeah.
The guy hasn't hit since advanced A. So, I mean, I don't understand why they kind of thought that, he was, I mean, I know that he was your favorite player for like 3 days, but,
Yes. I saw him hit a homer in person. So,
yeah, that was exciting. He did look good for a few days, but then the warts started showing up in the at bats. And here's the real problem is when things started going sideways in the field, because that was where he was supposed to be money. And
yeah,
he was not, he was booting the ball and having some bad times.
But that's the problem too with even like Lopez and DeYoung. It's like you guys don't get to make mistakes in the field anymore because like part of the reason why they were sacrificing no offense for these guys was for like immaculate defense. So like, sorry if that's like too high of a standard to hold you to, but like, I mean, the defense has to be awesome. Otherwise, like, I don't really know what we're doing here.
Yeah. What is the point if you guys aren't going to do the things that we were sold on?
Yeah.
From the very beginning, there's no reason really to keep you on the roster.
Well, so then the question is like, if Bryan Ramos looks good enough for them to be like, you're playing third until Moncada returns, and then we kind of have a decision to make, whatever, fine, right? But like you're playing third for the time being, Mendick's ready. I mean, I guess like I think Mendick should replace one of those other guys, and then Ramos stays, right? I mean, like I don't think Lopez has an option, but I mean like Shoemaker is easy to discard. I mean, you just send him down or whatever, and you keep Mendick as the utility guy, or you play him at second and have Lopez as the utility guy, but. Yeah, like I don't know that Ramos is necessarily like the one that's expendable when these guys are healthy somehow.
No, the Shoemaker guy, he should be on his way to Charlotte, and I mean DeYoung hasn't been very good.
Yeah.
Grossman's been not good at all either. I would keep Nicky Lopez just because his defense has been pretty good. His bat hasn't been great, but
yeah, he's fine. He plays everywhere.
I can eat that.
Yeah. One of those guys is fine. And he's from here.
Entire roster.
Yeah, and Nicky Lopez, I think, has utility. Like he's a utility guy. Like, you know, like he can play both. He can play all three. He can probably play some third. He shouldn't be your leadoff guy, but you know, like like it is kind of what it is. Like I think they thought that DeYoung would be short term and that you know he was going to keep the seat warm for Coulson, and Montgomery's just not quite ready, and he doesn't seem like you know I hope Montgomery is in Charlotte for quite a bit longer. He's just I don't really know what the rush is. I don't think they really have one. Like I said earlier, like Ramos is on the 40 man, so it's not the same thing at all. This
Right.
was like this was like an easier move to make. Adding a guy to the 40 right now prematurely makes no sense with the amount of like roster churn that they're going to continue to have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There are so many roster moves that could be made. I don't think that moving Coulson to a 40-man spot right now is even an option, in my opinion. You know, I want him to be quite a
Right.
bit more ready before he gets put there.
Well, but it's another thing like Kai Bush, right? Like Kai Bush, it looks pretty good. But I mean, say they need a spot start that you want to give to a kid. Like I think Drew Thorpe or even Eater are more likely to get that spot start than Kai Bush because like there's no reason to add Kai Bush to the 40 man like until you clear out some of these vets and you're going to add him to stay. Like the rule five's like I mean obviously right like he kills it in double and he should be in your rotation fine he's up, but I think like if you need one start that's just where like sometimes these moves look weird, right? Like why is Jake Eater starting? Well, he hasn't pitched in 4 days. We need a guy and he's on the 40 man. You know, like
Yeah.
stuff like that happens all the time.
I mean, I think that they've kind of proven who they're going to go to in those situations, though, with Cannon and Nastrini sitting in Charlotte doing, you know, basically, like I mentioned earlier, just getting their time in. You know, they're just putting in their innings, not actually,
Yeah.
you know, doing any real work there, you know?
Mm-hmm. So something I didn't anticipate. What are your thoughts on Jared Schuster in a bullpen role? Because he looks pretty good at it. You know, I just kind of thought back end lefty, definite like starter because I didn't know how his stuff would play. You know, he's not one of these typical guys where like we've talked about this in the past, right? Where you're just gonna like amplify 2 pitches and be like this relief monster. He's just kind of like a 4-pitch type, but he looks pretty good out of the bullpen.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, I liked, like, he was my favorite part of that trade was getting Schuster.
Absolutely.
And I was curious about Riley Gowans, but the Schuster, you know, part of it was my big piece there, and you know, it appears that they have fixed the command issues that he was running into last year, and it looks like they've added a little bit back of that deception that he had last year, or not last year, but the year before, that made him shoot up to their number one prospect, you know? So yeah, he's not looked bad. He's looked downright useful, which I like.
Yeah, and maybe he's, you know, he can actually go a couple of innings. So, you know, like I think the biggest issue would be, you know, like just can he get righties out consistently, right? Because then that'll stop him from going 2 1/3 or 3 innings like every time he pitches. But yeah, I mean it's worth a shot. I mean, we talked about like all these starting pitching prospects that they have, right? Like some of them are going to be in the bullpen. Like it's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah, this is the kind of the thing that I've been wondering about for the last couple of weeks because the White Sox have such a glut of pitching. And I know, did you happen to catch Elijah on CHGO talking about the White Sox system with those guys at all?
I did, yeah.
So, you know, they mentioned that, you know, the White Sox have so much pitching that they had thought, you know, maybe that they go hitting for sure in the draft. And, I mean, I don't know whether that's going to be, you know, we've had this conversation, and I guess
Yeah.
we'll get a little bit more into some of the draft stuff later, but, you know, they just have so much pitching. They only have one team and they only have 13 spots available for pitching at the moment. And there's, you know, what, 20 starters, 25 starters that they've got. these guys have to go somewhere. So either it's going to be in the rotation, org filler guys, or they're going to get traded for other,
for offense. Yeah, right.
So who are those people going to be? And I don't expect you to have an answer. It's kind of a rhetorical
Yeah, but
question.
I mean, we had the conversation with Jake about Jake Eater, right? Like how that's not totally like a lost cause if he's not this like excellent starter. Like he'd be awesome out of the bullpen. I mean, we're seeing it with Michael Kopech right now. I mean, Jake Eater probably have his fastball at 99 with a plus slider like out of the pen. Now I'd rather it work out and have him be your number 3 starter. That would be much better. But I mean, there is utility for some of these other guys. I mean, me and Mike talked last year about Norge Vera, and like obviously, look, like I think at this point, like betting on Norge Vera to turn into anything would be foolish. But there's no reason to not ramp that guy up in a bullpen role. I mean, it's just like you can't start. You're hurt all the time.
Yeah.
What are your 2 best pitches? Throw them like as hard as you possibly can, and fast track you to the big leagues and get something out of the money that we spent. But there's just all sorts of guys like that where it's like, okay, he can't start. What can he be? I mean, even like as negative as we've been about Kopech at times, like he's throwing 102 out of the bullpen. Like somebody's going to want a Michael Kopech from you. You should be able to create guys.
Yeah, 100%. If you've got, I mean, I don't know what the White Sox draft strategy is per se when it comes to pitchers, but for a long time it was high velo guys, and if you've got a bunch of those guys, there's no reason, if you've got those guys, if they can't stay healthy or don't have the stamina to be able to go 4 or 5 innings, there's no reason not to use those guys for 2 inning, at 98 miles an hour instead.
Yeah, I know like day 2 and day 3, like they haven't been afraid of like command issues, right? You look at your like Eric Adler's of the world, right? These types of guys, because they think like, okay, these guys have premium stuff. They can't throw enough strikes. So if we can get them to throw enough strikes, you might have something here, rather than them like, the Dodgers are notorious for, they draft terrible command guys all the time. I mean, Nick Nastrini was 6 walks at, per 9 in college. They drafted a ton of these guys, and then they fix it because they know what they're doing, right? So yeah, like some teams just do it. The one thing the White Sox have done lately that I like college pitching on day 2 of the draft, because I think some of these guys are just underrated, right? When you can get, and obviously Sean Burke, like that hasn't worked, but your Seth Keeners and your Jonathan Cannons for $900,000,
Jake Peppers, and
yeah, like I'd
those guys.
much rather do that than like take some high school guy. Like, if you're gonna take high school pitching, you take the top first round guys. Like you take your Noah Schultz guys. Like those are the guys you take. And even like Tanner McDougal had more upside than a 5th rounder because he pitched in Nevada, So that's like, as far as their strategy goes, look, I know those guys like talked about not taking a pitcher at 5. We got a long way to go here. We're going to have a lot of guests on, and I like it, it sounds like prep bat at the moment, but like there's a list of guys that they wouldn't pass on. One of those pitchers, could easily be one of those guys, like you can go in there with a plan, and then all of a sudden, like you walk out with Burns, because like he's like still sitting there,
Yep.
And then how much does that alter like what you have planned for 2, 3, and 4? I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. So speaking of, I don't want to. I mean, I don't think that there's really a whole ton of stuff to talk about right now with the draft, but just quickly, Travis Bazzana hit 3 home runs today, and Charlie Condon hit his 33rd?
Yeah, I think he's
like
got
that?
him in 7 straight games, I think. Yeah, he's absolutely insane. The baseballs are juiced in college. Like they're totally juiced. Like they're hitting titleists. Like
yes and no, because the other guys aren't doing it.
That's true. Yeah.
So yeah, obviously if you were to put a Major League Baseball in those games,
Yeah.
Maybe he's got 20 home runs instead of 33.
I think those guys it might be the 1 and 2 pick, but I don't know in what order. I just like it's easy to fall into this trap. Like with Cleveland, we've talked about this quite a bit. Like their slots 10 million. There's no way they're paying somebody in this draft 10 million. So who's willing to take who's the best guy they can get at a slight discount, right? And it doesn't seem like that's going to be Charlie Condon. So if you made me take Condon or the field for number 1, I'd absolutely take the field. But I don't know, who knows? But he shouldn't fall further than 2 or 3. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, this guy's, so.
Yeah. And you had mentioned previously that he hasn't had any wood bat success elsewhere,
Yeah.
in the Cape Cod League or whatever
But he hasn't had this much
doing.
college success either before this year. So maybe put a wood bat
Fair
in his
enough.
hands and maybe he'd be fine. But no, you're right. I mean, he's a redshirt soft. Teams like the Guardians, man, they love that Cape Cod success, and Team USA is wood bat, I believe. So yeah, I mean, there's just some guys that they just don't. Now he's got the age on his side. They love young guys, Cleveland does, and not just high schoolers, guys with late birthdays. They love. So Condon fits in that regard, right? But they also love infielders with power who have destroyed the Cape Cod League, and that's Travis Bazzana. So,
Yeah.
so,
Yep.
so that he, to me, seems like the favorite for Cleveland would be Bazzana.
He is such a Cleveland Guardian.
100%.
That franchise, he fits perfectly, and I absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Hate it. So I
Yeah,
want to bring this up here.
This is not Nick Madrigal.
No,
Travis
no, this is
yeah.
Same school, same position, completely different guy. I wanted to bring this up and get your thoughts here. I need to draft the highest upside player this year, since next year will be 10 or 11. Now, generally, I would hope that would be the goal, is to get the best talent.
The highest upside guy. It hasn't always been for the White Sox. I mean, they did the same thing last year. I mean, even if you like Jacob Gonzalez, they did not take the highest upside player on the board. They took a safe player.
Yeah.
You cannot afford to do that this year. The thing that's going to be tough for me is how much tunnel vision do they get on the 2 prep guys? And what do the 2 prep guys, one of them, right? What does one of them allow you to do later that you'd like to do? I think that's the difference, right? Because if you come into a draft with a plan to take Conor Griffin and save $1 million because you have your next 3 picks, kind of lined up, it's really hard to pivot and be we're taking Charlie Condon because he's on the board at 5, right? But also, if he's on the board at 5, you probably take him and pivot, right? But those
100%.
are right. So those are the things that make the baseball draft a little bit difficult, because it's all about money and bonus pool, and they like to say oh yeah, we worked on a deal tonight, and it's always nonsense, right? I talked to multiple Sox prospects and their parents after the fact, where it's oh yeah, we knew the night before or whatever. It's always just kind of, and then which mock drafts to look at to see who the teams are being tied to in second round and stuff, because it's just, it's all agents and these guys set prices, and that's how they get pushed down the board and whatnot. So, but yeah, I mean, picking at 5, you could literally have anybody on the board, right? I mean, especially with who's in front of them. And we've talked about the money saving. I think there's going to be a lot of teams, well, not a lot, but 4 teams in front of the White Sox that are all going to be hunting deals. So who knows? I wouldn't be shocked by anything at this point. We're pretty far out.
Yes. Broadway. Yikes.
Well, so here's the thing. So I'm actually going to defend Kenny a little bit, and I don't do it often. But back then, when they were very strict, well, they weren't strict, but there was the draft, that was when that wasn't the bonus pool era, and Jerry was buddies with Bud Selig and refused to break any unwritten rule with the draft. So your Theo Epsteins of the world are going over slot in round 5, 6, 7, adding prep talent. The White Sox were sticking to the hard slot, even when nobody else was. So, Kenny Williams liked high upside guys. High upside guys are expensive. So that's how you end up with Keenan Walker, and Keon Barnum. When you want a high upside guy that your owner's willing to pay for. So yeah, I mean, obviously Lance Broadway and McAuliffe, that's not great. But I think they thought at the time, again, safe college pitching that'll get to the big leagues, right? And it just like didn't work out. But yeah, it's pretty tough when your owner hamstrings you. I will say the draft hasn't been like that like the last decade or so as far as money they spend on the draft. Now we can criticize the players they've taken, and we talked a lot about
Talent eval.
2016 through 2020, right? But they spend over the they spend like pretty much right up to the 5% every year. So that's like not a criticism that's fair if anybody makes it.
I assume this is Conor Griffin
It has
that
to
we're
be.
talking about here.
Yes, he's got 1,000 stolen bases in Mississippi. Yes.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring this back up that blank name brought up. It says that Jared Schuster it can't be worse than Tim Hill. Tim Hill has 7 appearances without giving up a run, my friend. I'm just going to toss that out there, is that apparently the story goes that somebody found some sort of mechanical flaw in the bullpen with Tim Hill. And since he found that out, it's fixed all of his issues.
Like a player or like Brian
Yes,
Bannister?
a player. Yep. I don't remember who it was, but I did hear that on broadcast from somebody, I believe.
That's like the type of stuff that Grant Taylor's supposedly doing in Arizona.
Yeah.
It's in my article, like, multiplier is what I've heard. Like I've heard him described as a multiplier because having him there is like having another coach like around like all of your players. That's how crazy this guy is, apparently.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
That's what I've heard about Bazana.
Crazy in a good way. So don't,
yeah,
like, it's fine. Like,
yeah. I like having those guys around, and like I mentioned it to you previously. If you go and watch, if you go on YouTube and search up Joe Doyle's interview with Travis Bazana that he did with him, tons of awesome information, and you can see how this guy makes his teammates better. It's awesome. You got having guys like that is just huge.
So speaking back to like Conor Griffin, the White Sox have been in to see him often. That is Warren Hughes area, and this is like Warren Hughes is the scout of the moment, apparently. Not because he's necessarily, I don't know that it's like their best area scout or anything, but there's a lot of players in Mississippi and Louisiana that Warren Hughes gets to get his eyes on. He got like 5 draft picks in their top 10 last year, and if they take Conor Griffin this year, he'll get another one.
Yeah, crazy. So.
Yeah, it was
brutal.
Reliever in the first round.
Yeah.
They've done that a couple other times too. So
it hasn't worked out then either. So that's been awesome.
Fast track Zach Birdie to the big leagues.
Oh man, that did not work out so hot. So we've talked Bryan Ramos. We've talked the ACL. Let's move into the minor league pitching performances that have been going on. Let's start with Kannapolis. Is there anybody there that you're seeing that is triggering something that's saying, hey, I was wrong about this guy, or this is exactly what I thought it was going to be, and it's good?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good. I think Keener didn't start in college. The White Sox thought he could start. He can clearly start, right? It's low A. He probably should be in high A, but we've talked about like the glut of pitching that they have, the reason why he's not. Lucas Gordon carves sometimes. I think this isn't surprising. Pitchability lefty down there that like knows what the heck he's doing, And then Aldrin Bautista looks pretty explosive.
He had some command the other day.
Yeah, like
that was the home plate umpire. I'm almost 100% certain.
So Aldrin Bautista is a guy where if that's like a reliever convert, right? That's like premium back of the bullpen like type of stuff, right? There's no reason to do that now. You just let him keep starting. He's super young. But that's like the kind of stuff we're talking about where it's like, okay, like we have some concerns. Put him in the bullpen and he's awesome. You were tweeting about there's a plus. Does Bokenstead have
Bockenstead?
Bockenstead? Yeah, does he have a plus pitch or what?
Oh, his curveball. His curveball's nasty. Yeah. They and actually the Lynchburg Hillcats announcers were just floored the fact that nobody on the team could touch this dude's curveball all game. It's like they wouldn't even offer it at half the time because they knew they weren't going to hit it.
Yeah.
Now the Ballers have a few guys like that. Bryce Collins, he's a reliever. He's got his curveball is just disgusting.
Another one of those tread athletics guys that they found, like
Yeah.
after the draft, like undrafted free agent.
Yeah, there's a couple of those guys down in Canny that have been pleasant surprises that I had no idea who they were. And a couple of those guys are going to be on the ACL, and some of them are rehabbing, coming back from injuries that Kannapolis is missing in their bullpen right now. So they'll be getting a nice influx of talent, over the next couple of months in there. So
was it Winston highlights where the announcer put me to sleep?
Oh, he's the worst. I don't know. I don't know what his name is, but
what are it was. I'm like, is this the real guy, like the regular guy, or do they have I thought they had a fan in the booth?
No, this is their guy, and it has been for a few years. He's kind of like he's like singing a song.
Yeah, it's
trying to write songs
right
while he's doing these calls, and it's the word, everything rhymes, and he says the same thing 4 times in a row: strike two, strike two, strike two, strike two.
It's monotone,
yeah, and he can't. He does not like dead air. There's no dead air in his broadcast. It is just absolutely brutal.
Well, I wonder if he does a bunch of games without an analyst, or if he used to. And then that's, no, not when it's Tory Taylor, Doug. Taking Tory Taylor's fine, but yeah, usually that's kind of what it's.
I had to bring it up because it had the punter on there, so I had to bring it up.
You know what though? A lot of teams do take relievers in the second round.
Yeah, if they're guys, if they're real guys, yeah.
And I will say it is the strategy for some teams that have 4 picks or 5 picks in the top 100. If you go prep and you have to save somewhere, sometimes they just grab the best reliever in the draft early to under slot and then whatever. But yeah, no, it doesn't usually work out. I mean, even who's the Angels guy that's back in the minors? Ben Joyce.
Oh, Ben Joyce, yeah, his commands all. That's the guy who
he throws 1,000, but I mean, he just can't throw strikes.
Throws 104. Bryan Ramos took him out for a home run. 3-run home run the other day. He's, and I've watched him blow a 5-run lead in the bottom of the 9th several times with the Trash Pandas, actually, just because he's either very on and absolutely unhittable or just all over the place.
And that was, I think they took him in the second.
Yeah, that sounds about right. The volunteer firefighter out of Tennessee.
Yeah.
He was awesome in college, but he came up and people that actually weren't swinging it as junk didn't work out so well. So speaking of Winston-Salem, let's move to the Dash. Is there something there that is piquing your interest?
Westcott, I would say maybe this guy's not dead and buried. I think we kind of talked about this last week. He's coming around, this is more like it, right? He repeated the level, but that's fine. I mean, there's no big deal with that. He's 21 years old still. I mean, he's still low for that level. He could spend the whole year there and then go to Birmingham next year and have some struggles at Birmingham and repeat that. And he's still young for the level, It's one of the reasons why you take high school guys. So yeah, he's starting to figure things out a little bit. I don't know. Zavala, disappointing? I think it's just high A's hard a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things that he's
but
young, and it's that's going to take some time. That's it.
Jacob Gonzalez's defense is good. The White Sox seem to be happy with him. I would prefer more power and less of a batting average personally, but we'll see how he kind of explores that. And then there's all sorts of pitching there too, highlighted by Noah Schultz, who is absolutely filthy and decided to just add another filthy pitch for some reason. He's like, I'm just going to start throwing a cutter too, because nobody can hit any of my other stuff. So let's see if they can hit this. And look, I like that
they can't.
And look, he's not even struggling, right? But I like that he gives up runs occasionally. It's fine.
Well, he didn't give up those runs though.
I know.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So
he needs to work through some jams and he's getting himself. He usually gets himself into a little bit of trouble and then gets himself out of trouble very easily. So he is a stud.
Yeah, Ben Spanier from Baseball Prospectus was there yesterday, and I had a very brief chat
Yeah.
online with him, and he's just like, "Oh, who just adds a pitch like that?"
Did you
I'm
see
like,
where? Did you
he
see where
does.
like
He's good.
he misidentified one of his filthy pitches?
Yeah,
He's like, "Oh,
as the
actually, that was the cutter. This is the
that's a
slider."
cutter.
Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, the cutter that like moved like I don't know 8 inches in on dude's hands. Then Tomar Johnson, who's like one of the top
Oh my
prospects
god,
for the
did you see
Pittsburgh
how
Pirates.
lost he looked? Like he's
Oh man, he was like a foot away from the ball, with at the closest point of his swing, a foot away. It was
well,
awful.
because it looks like a strike out of his hand. He's like a condor. Like,
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is that the tunneling is so
yeah,
good. Like they have no idea what's coming,
yeah,
and
they
it's
can.
like they have no idea which
Yeah.
direction the ball's going
I
to
mean,
go.
he could pitch out of a big league bullpen right now.
Don't give him any ideas.
Yeah, well, no, I know. I don't want them to do that, but like,
I mean, if you gave him if Pedro had him, he'd probably hit his 80 innings in
yeah,
like August.
yeah, it'd be really quick. Yeah,
Yikes. Also, Westcott. We've talked about how his swing looks so much better, and he's leading the dash. I think in OPS or whatever. He had the day off today, and Bryan Ramos got promoted yesterday. I did check; he did not get promoted. I asked because I was like,
that's like an old White Sox move.
"Yeah,
He is
100%."
do not do that. That would not. Be
I
good.
didn't want him to, but
Yeah.
I asked because I was like, he's been hitting better and there's a vacancy now. And he's like, I haven't heard anything. I was like, all right, perfect.
Yeah, there's plenty
Brutal.
of org filler to go there. So
Agreed. So moving on to the one team that
the
I had hope
Barons.
in today, after the Ballers lost in, I think the 8th inning. They gave up a couple of runs in the 8th inning that put them in a pretty big hole. The Charlotte Knights gave up the lead in the 9th and then gave up 2 runs in the 10th to lose 7-6 in extras. And then the Dash were ahead 5-3 and then ended up losing 15-5.
Yeah.
I had my hope on the Barons, and then it got rained out.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was supposed to be, and it was supposed to be Thorpe, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bummer. I was
Drew
not.
Drew Thorpe's pretty decent, Ian.
Yeah, he's all right.
He's not bad. Yeah, like Jairo Iriarte looks a little bit different than I was expecting, but also pretty good. It's a good pitching staff in Birmingham. So I'll tell you this: a couple of beat writers asked me about Eric Adler, so White Sox brass must be talking about him because
Sniffing around his
they don't.
door already.
Yeah,
huh?
beat guys don't usually reach out to me about stuff like that unless like somebody important told them, "Hey, take a look at this guy that we just promoted to Birmingham." So he could be one of these relief options. Like if he can throw strikes, we might actually see him because there's, I've notoriously said like guys like this that are like reliever only types, they're like just hike them up to the big leagues and see if they can hang because there's really no reason to sit here and pitch in the minors for this long.
Yeah.
So.
No, for sure. So here's a question. Clevinger's coming up tomorrow, so somebody will be sent down. While that is true, it's got to be a pitcher. So who do you think is going to be the guy who gets launched?
I heard maybe a Leon DL stint. Because like one of the guys we talked about earlier, Jared Schuster, I think is one of the only ones with options. Him, Leisure, they both have options. So my guess is it's something with Dominic Leone. Clevinger's already on the 40. And then Flexen probably goes into the bullpen, I would imagine.
That was what I was thinking. Yeah, he'll go to long relief.
Yeah, and then that's your move. So because you have a rotation now with Mike Clevinger and Brad Keller in it. So along with Mike Soroka, Crochet.
I mean, like who would have thought that this was going to be the pitching rotation for the White Sox in 2024? It's absurd.
And Crochet's got 40 innings already. So
he's pitching well enough that they can do it. That's the actual shocker,
But
is that the command has been so good.
we've talked a lot about what they're going to do though, because like at some point something's coming, right? Like a shutdown or like different. I don't know. We'll see. I mean,
They're going to have to do something because
I
they
didn't
can't
think
let
they
him
were just
continue
going
to
to
go
let him
like
throw
this.
140 innings.
Well, but I didn't think it was going to be an issue because I
Right.
thought he would hit his pitch limits in like 3
100%.
innings.
I thought he'd go 3
You
innings
know?
to start, yeah, and he's been good. So, and he,
Yeah.
he's got roughed up a few times, but that's fine. Like the biggest thing this year for him is the innings load. So yes, we get to watch Mike Clevinger again. So lucky us.
Yeah, not really a fan of that, but I just don't see the point. But we've had this conversation. I don't really don't feel like talking about it again.
No, we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah. So Barons pitching staff, very good.
Yeah, offense is good too.
Yeah, I mean Kai Bush has looked fantastic. I was just looking at it the other day, like the whips of all these pitchers. Like everybody's whip is phenomenal.
They're
Everybody's ERA is good.
Well, they're like all over the Southern League leaderboard. Like it's
Three
like
of them.
it's like
Yeah.
all their pitchers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even
I think
Mason's been fine too, right? Like,
oh, he's been great. Yeah.
yeah,
He
right.
his first inning he hit by pitch, and then I think 2 singles or something like that.
Yeah.
They scored 2 runs, and the 2 singles and that run was all he gave. Those 2 runs on those 2 singles were the only things he gave up for 6 innings. The next 5 innings were completely clean for the most part. Didn't walk anybody, and no more hits. I mean, he's looked phenomenal. He's like, here's the issue, right? I like him a lot, and obviously you know that because we've talked about him, for the last year, pretty much. Like we've had this conversation. He's going to bring something in a trade if they don't bring him up. So at some point,
You thinking
we're
like
gonna be looking.
like a prospect for prospect deal? If like, like in a perfect world, right, where he's like your 8th or 9th best guy, like, do you trade him for something you need? Maybe, right? I don't know. Or is he a 3-inning reliever because he could do that role too, like on a big league team? Even though that's
Yeah.
not necessarily fair to him, right? But
No, that's what I'm saying.
but
Yeah.
somebody has to do this. Like Jared Schuster's doing it right now. Like we just talked about it, So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, this is kind of where I'm going with this, Doug, is which pitcher gets traded first, and it's a valid question because with the amount of pitching and the fact that they've all been pretty stinking good, somebody is going to have to be. Yeah, I mean, this is what good teams generally do. They stockpile things, and then when it's time to get something that they need,
Yeah.
they can use that to resupply
Trade
their major league team.
trade from an area of strength to add a weakness, And I mean, even like with the big league guys, like, yeah, like in a perfect world, like you're trading all of these veterans, but like, I don't know how much value these guys, like, I don't think you're getting much for Mike Clevinger or for Brad Keller. I mean, look, something maybe, right? Like you can trade them for cash or like a low A reliever or whatever, like we've talked about. The real question, I think, is Eric Fetty. And I've been on the side of like, this has been a bit of a revelation, right? It's good scouting. So this is like good for the future that the White Sox identified Eric Fetty and that he's pretty good. But as a Scott Boras guy, I think you owe it to the organization to listen or shop him around like at this deadline to see just how much you can get. And you don't have to deal him. I just don't know that it's going to be easy to make Eric Fetty like somebody that you're able to hang on to for a deal that you'd be willing to sign, right? Because like I'd love to add 2 years onto that deal and just be like, yeah, he's good. Like let's keep him. But I think like with his representation, I just don't know how possible that is.
I just want to address this really quick because this came up.
Oh yeah,
Said you're getting nothing for Clevinger. They put him on waivers last year. No one bit. Completely different scenario this year.
because of the buyout.
Yeah.
The buyout was brutal last year, and like, look, I know that was like out there that nobody wanted Mike Clevinger. Like if you would have claimed Mike Clevinger or taken him for nothing, like you're still paying his $4 million buyout. So I don't know. Maybe that's wishful thinking. I do think that had something to do with it.
It has to.
I
mean, not that $4 million is a lot of money, but if you're trading away some talent as well, like it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like it's not. Yeah, he's not making very much money this year. Like, so if he does the same thing he did last year, and there's no takers this year, then yeah, like then nobody wants this guy. But you know,
Which could
yeah,
possibly be
100.
true
Yeah,
anyway,
it
but
could absolutely be true. I just think it like lacks context. You know, that I don't know for sure that that's the reason he was owed money. You know, so. Yeah, we'll see. I wish we didn't have to like talk about it though, but we do.
yeah, I don't. Yeah, we don't have to talk about it anymore. Just it is a weird situation, and the fact that he was even brought here in the first place is also very bizarre.
Especially when you have
Uh,
as much pitching as you do.
and when you have Brad Keller now as well, it's
Yeah.
like I just don't understand why you keep on stacking all these. Like, what are you hoping to get out of it? That's the thing I don't understand. I
Well,
mean, I guess
Pedro needs veterans.
Pedro needs something.
He does.
Um,
Look at this.
so
We went an hour and I didn't even talk about John Schriffen.
well, we're gonna get there in a second. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to take it away from you. You
Yeah.
need. I need to give you your soapbox to stand on.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to finish Charlotte here real quick. Nastrini and Cannon are there. Chad Kuhl's actually been fairly decent. He's put up some decent numbers. Today he had a quality start for the Knights today. Which, how often do you see that with the Knights? Not very often. So that's been a nice surprise. Anything else in Charlotte other than Coulson Montgomery tickle your fancy to talk about?
No, Montgomery. Jared Walsh is there now, which he
Yeah.
he looked like he was going to be okay for the Angels for a little bit, and then obviously like was not. So he's a lefty bat playing first base. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see, right? But there's not really that many prospects in Charlotte. I mean, Oscar Colas is there, Fletcher's there, Deloach is there. Deloach has actually been okay, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's just that team kind of is what it is right now.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out the whole Jared Walsh thing. And what point does it really serve? I mean, other than the fact that they didn't have a real first baseman at Charlotte. I kind of feel like if Tim Elko was tearing the cover off the ball in AA, that's where he'd be. But
right. I bet it has to do like LaRusso worked with the Angels before he came back here. My guess is he likes Jared Walsh, and he's like, give my guy a minor league deal.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. Does it's been asked in the chat? Does Elvis Andrus have a job yet? I don't think he does.
So I thought he signed a minor league deal with someone like a contender, maybe like Arizona or somebody.
I thought he got let go,
but he was cut since. Yeah.
He had been cut, or he wanted to take his free agent exemption because I'm better than that. I'm going to make a major league team.
Yeah. So he was signed initially, but now I don't think he's playing anywhere because he is no Gouda anymore. Like.
No, not good. It's an interesting question. Does Deloach get called up before Colas?
Oh,
I
say
probably. I don't know if you saw the thing the other night. Oscar Colas hit
maybe double?
Maybe it was today. It might have been today.
He pimped a double today. Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it ends up bouncing off the wall out in center field, and because he stood there and watched it and started his home run trot right out of the gate, he ends up at second instead of at third.
So Oscar Colas is way too good to DFA, but not good enough for them to play him in the big leagues. So that's
I've said this multiple times. The thing, it's not a skill issue. It's not a talent issue. This is 100% what's in between the ears issue. Always has been. The guy has the skill set to play Major League Baseball.
I absolutely am not ready for Kurtz. Like
Nick Kurtz coming to the South Side.
I'm ready for
first baseman.
I'm ready for Nick Kurtz to go number 1 overall to the Cleveland Guardians. That's what I'm ready for. That would be great. Yeah.
Which would be redundant because they got Manzardo just getting called up.
Well, I think it's smart. I think they should take a first baseman at number 1.
Absolutely. Hopefully, Kurtz manages to win the Golden Spike, so they can get their very own bust Golden Spikes first baseman in the first round.
Yeah,
Of course, that won't
I
happen.
think
But
Charlie Condon's probably going to win the Golden Spikes.
yeah, I would say so. I'm just trying to put a voodoo hex on the
Probably.
Guardians.
I think Chuck's got that wrapped up. I think
Yeah, it looks that way. All right, so the big thing,
Johnny Boy. Yeah,
John Schriffen. People are up in arms about, and I was going to put a piece of tape here that said "stand
yeah.
up" on it, but alas,
Yeah.
I did not.
And I forgot my for the haters hat. So
For the haters, tell me about John Schriffen.
Well, like I don't know. I guess like I'm surprised that it like took on the life that it has. Like two like big things for me. Like he's very clearly like not prepared, but like I don't know that that's his fault. Like I think it's just part of the bigger White Sox problem, right? Like look, like I had an issue with the haters thing because I want to know like what does that mean? Like who are the haters? Like I just think I think I said this on last week's show. Like, if you're an adult, like evoking, like, oh, for the haters, like you're kind of a loser. Like, come on, like, what are we doing, right? And I don't know if like he was going after people like that were going after him, or like he was frustrated, or what. Like, what does that mean, right? Because I've always said like nobody hates the White Sox more than White Sox fans. So like, if he truly wants to like know the haters, he will, because he's like really cool and like comes out to the tailgates and stuff. Like he'll meet those people if that's who he was talking about.
Yeah, true.
So that's fine. And even like the Southside stand up thing is fine. Like he's super enthusiastic. Like when the White Sox are good again, if he's broadcasting, like he will be fun. But like the Bill Veeck thing is a problem for me. And like maybe that's like over the top, right? Like maybe like, oh, why would you know who Bill Veeck is? I think if you take this job, you should probably like learn who Bill Veeck is like a month in. And if you don't, like maybe Brooks Boyer or somebody should like tell you who he is, or like put a little description on like how to pronounce the guy's name correctly. Like, like it's just like he can get better. He's enthusiastic. Like it might be okay. His partner's not helping him any, which is like another problem. But the one thing that I really wanted to say is like there are all these people on Twitter and everywhere else that are like, oh, you're missing the real problem. Everybody's going after John Schriffen. Like, he's not the problem. Like, everybody knows that. Like, they're going after, like, whoever because it's White Sox baseball, right? Everybody knows who the real villain is here. Like, I've seen so many, like, like the guys at 670 or, like Matt Spiegel's all over Schriffen, right? And I've seen the comments like, they should go after Jerry. They all go after Jerry. But it
Doesn't
it
matter.
doesn't matter. Like everybody knows the biggest problem is Jerry, right? Like we can be upset about two things at the same time, or three, or four, or even five with this team, right? So yeah, I think like John didn't do himself any favors, like declining interview requests. I don't think like I think some people were like, hey, this haters thing was pretty weird. Like, why don't you come on and talk about it? And that would have been the end of it when he comes on and he says, oh, there's, lots of people in the media like that want to see us or that like want to kick us when we're down. And that's what I'm talking. Okay, cool. I don't agree, but fine. That's fine. And it would have been over with. But, when you handle it the way that like the White Sox very likely told him to handle it, people are talking about this a freaking week later. Like it's insane that like this is like still a thing. And look, I'm doing it now, but we haven't talked since last Sunday. So yeah, he could be good, but there's just like a few things. Like it's tough to come into town and act like you've been in town for like all this time, right?
It's very difficult.
You have to understand that like you're the outsider, and you almost have to like act like it too early on and like show some deference. And I think he did a little bit, but not enough. There's a lot of instances where it's like, yeah, I don't know that you're qualified to like say that yet. But look, a lot of people seem to like him. So, hopefully it works.
Yeah, and like I will say, I haven't been watching the White Sox very much, so maybe I'm not picking up on all the bad stuff that he does. Obviously I didn't hear Bill Veeck or whatever he said, but like here's the thing: is that one of the things that White Sox fans have a reputation of for being is intelligent fans and knowing a lot about baseball, right? Here's the problem you got a guy that's, coming from New York or whatever, and he's not a White Sox guy. He's not from Chicago. Benetti had that built in where it was his team growing up. So when he comes and, this is the gig that he always wanted until the team soured him.
Yeah.
They bring in Griffin, who doesn't know anything about the team. And here's the real issue, I feel, is that he is not a baseball guy. He's never called baseball games. That's, except for college. So that's the issue. This isn't slam ball. If it was slam ball, he'd be sorted, but he's not used to calling baseball games. He doesn't have that knowledge base to build on. And calling a baseball game is really hard.
Really hard.
Especially for a terrible team.
Right. But exactly what you're saying is like, this is market 3, man. And this is where the criticism comes in. And I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter like, oh, everybody's picking on Griffin, like, oh, it's not fair, it's not fair. Like, it's market 3. It's not his fault that like Jerry hired him.
Yeah.
All he had to do was like accept the job. That's fine.
And
the problem is
you would. It's one of only 30 jobs in Major League Baseball.
The problem is there's a million more qualified guys that could have this job instead. And like, yeah, sorry, the team's bad, and like you're under a microscope, man. Like it kind of comes with the territory. Like it is what it is.
Yeah, White Sox fans all know the history. So when we hear you call Bill Veek,
yeah,
you're gonna face some backlash. That's just
haven't you ever read Veek as in Reek?
Yes, Veek as in Reek. Isn't Reek Reek's that guy from Game of Thrones?
Yes,
I totally remember.
Yeah.
You got anything else for this week?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. FutureSox.net. You can find all of our written content. If you are listening to this via podcast, realize that on Sunday nights we are on Twitch and on YouTube, and you can watch the show. If you go to FutureSox.net, you can find a Patreon link to support us if you like our content. Also, if you are unaware, every night 2 videos are posted to our YouTube account Tuesday through Sunday. There are 2 videos, one of starting pitchers, one of home runs. So go there and subscribe, get alerts if you want, and you can see all those things condensed so you don't have to search for it on Twitter. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at JamesFox917. You can find this podcast anywhere that you look for your podcasts. We appreciate your guys' time. We look forward to seeing you guys next Sunday. Pop in, say hello, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks. Have a great